Have you ever noticed how the moment you start growing, someone close to you suddenly changes? They say they support you, but their energy shifts. They joke more often, doubt you a little louder. They call it concern. But what if I told you that one of the most deceptive ways people block your success is by pretending they're not? It's like planting a tree in the shade. At first it seems fine, comfortable even. But over time it struggles to reach the sun. The roots grow, but the branches bend, twisting toward light that never comes. Or think of a traveler with a heavy pack. At first he doesn't notice the weight, but every mile gets harder. Not because he got weaker, but because someone quietly added bricks when he wasn't looking. That's what subtle sabotage feels like. Because while you're working on yourself, they're planting hesitation in your mind, not out of malice, but out of fear. Your growth reminds them of their own stagnation, and they'll block your path softly, through distractions, guilt, or concern disguised as care. So how do you stop them from blocking your success? Without arguing, without shrinking, without proving, without saying a word. Stay until the end, because the final sign changes everything. Let's get started. Number 1, they subtly discourage your ambition. Let's talk about one of the most deceptive ways someone tries to block your success, by subtly discouraging your ambition. These people won't tell you directly, don't aim higher, or don't improve yourself. That would be too obvious. Instead, they do something more calculated. They pretend to be concerned. They hide their doubt behind caring words. You'll hear things like, "I just don't want you to be disappointed," or, "You know how competitive that field is, right?" On the surface, it sounds like they're looking out for you. But if you listen closely, what they're really doing is planting hesitation. They're feeding your self-doubt. They're trying to shrink your vision without ever admitting it out loud. Here's the truth. They won't say, "Don't grow." They'll say, "Don't get your hopes up." And that sentence alone tells you everything you need to know. It reveals that your ambition makes them uncomfortable. Your drive reminds them of everything they've postponed or abandoned in themselves. And instead of facing their own lack of growth, they project fear onto you, wrapped in soft language, disguised as wisdom. But it's not wisdom, it's sabotage. This is where Stoic insight comes in. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "If you hear a voice within you say you cannot paint, then by all means paint, and that voice will be silenced." The voice isn't always yours, sometimes it's someone else's, and when you absorb their doubts, you allow that external fear to take root inside your internal world. But Stoicism teaches us to meet fear with action. If someone is quietly trying to make you hesitate, act faster. Move forward with more intention. Prove, not to them, but to yourself, that their doubts hold no weight. Let me share a story. A woman I know, let's call her Rachel, always dreamed of launching her own wellness business. She was talented, driven, and ready. But when she told her friend Mark, he responded with, "That's cool, but aren't you worried it might not work out? Most small businesses fail, you know." He smiled when he said it. He made it sound casual, almost helpful. But Rachel felt something in her chest tighten. For a few days, she actually questioned herself, until she realized Mark wasn't warning her out of love. He was warning her because her success would highlight his own inaction. So Rachel moved forward anyway. And today, she's thriving. Mark still hasn't started anything of his own. So how do you handle someone who quietly discourages your ambition? First, recognize the pattern. Concern that consistently leads to hesitation is not concern, it's subtle control. Second, separate their fear from your reality. Just because they're scared of risk doesn't mean you should be. And third, keep moving. Nothing silences a doubter more than the sound of progress. At the end of the day, protect your vision. Because when someone wants to block your success, They won't start with a wall, they'll start with a whisper, and it's up to you not to listen. Number 2, they mock your efforts as too serious. Let's talk about a tactic that's often disguised as humor, but is actually meant to shake your confidence. Someone sees you focused, disciplined, working hard towards something meaningful, and instead of supporting you, they make jokes. They say things like, "You're really taking this whole thing seriously, huh?" Or, "Relax, it's not that deep." They laugh it off, but the intent behind the comment isn't light, it's strategic. They're not joking to connect with you, they're joking to get you to question yourself. They want to make you feel like your dedication is something to be embarrassed about. Here's the truth. They're not mocking your effort to be funny. They're mocking it because it threatens them. When someone sees you being intentional about your life, it reminds them that they've been casual with theirs. And instead of leveling up themselves, they try to drag you down through ridicule. It's subtle, but it works. Because humor disarms. It makes you doubt yourself while convincing everyone else it's all just a joke. But you feel it. You know when the laughter isn't shared, when the punchline is your ambition. This is where Stoic wisdom becomes a compass. Epictetus said, "Don't explain your philosophy, embody it." You don't owe anyone a justification for your seriousness, your discipline, or your purpose. Let your actions speak. Let your life be the answer to every sarcastic remark. Because those who mock your efforts aren't laughing because they don't understand. They're laughing because deep down they do, and it makes them uncomfortable. Let me share a story. A man I know, let's call him Kevin, decided to go all in on a side project he'd been quietly working on for years. He started waking up earlier, spending weekends learning new skills, skipping out on distractions. His old group of friends noticed, and instead of supporting him, they joked, "Look at Kevin, Mr. CEO now," or "Guess we won't see you again until you make your first million." They laughed, but Kevin didn't, because he knew what was behind it. It wasn't humor, it was discomfort. His growth made them uneasy. Not because he was doing anything wrong, but because he was doing something they weren't brave enough to start. So Kevin didn't argue, he didn't explain, he just kept building. And today, those same friends, still joking, still stagnant. So how do you respond when someone mocks your seriousness? First, don't explain. If someone belittles your growth, it's because they're not ready to grow themselves. Second, don't shrink. Your discipline is not a weakness, it's your power. And third, keep showing up. Every day you stay committed, you make their noise irrelevant. At the end of the day, anyone who mocks your focus is revealing their own lack of it. You weren't made to be average, so don't let someone's sarcasm convince you to play small. Stay serious, stay steady, and let your results do all the talking. Number 3, they highlight your flaws loudly and publicly. Let's talk about one of the most manipulative ways people try to block your success. By loudly exposing your smallest flaws in front of others. They don't come to help you in private. They wait for an audience. They wait for the perfect moment, when eyes are watching and ears are listening, and then they strike. Not to offer insight, not to encourage growth, but to embarrass you, to shake your confidence. They'll point out a missed word, a tiny mistake, or something you've already corrected, and they'll make sure everyone hears it. This isn't feedback, it's a power play. You see, people who do this aren't trying to support you, they're trying to stop you. They feel threatened by your potential, so they weaponize your imperfections. They act like they're just being honest or constructive. But what they're really doing is attempting to block your forward motion with public shame. Their goal is to make you doubt yourself, to shrink, to second-guess your voice, your choices, and your presence. They want you to play small so they can feel big. This is where Stoic wisdom becomes your shield. Seneca once said, "To bear trials with a calm mind robs misfortune of its strength and burden." In moments like these, your strength is your composure. When they try to humiliate you, The most powerful thing you can do is stay grounded. Stay calm. Refuse to let their attempt land. Because the more silent and still you are, the louder their insecurity becomes. Let me tell you about someone. Her name is Sarah. She worked in a corporate office where her manager, Tom, had a habit of correcting her in front of others. Every team meeting, Tom would find some minor error to spotlight. "Sarah, didn't you forget to update that chart?" he'd ask, even when the issue was already resolved. At first, Sarah felt defeated, but then she started to notice a pattern. Tom never corrected others like that, just her, because she was the one rising. She was the one earning respect. So instead of reacting, Sarah decided to remain unshaken. She stayed composed, answered firmly, and let her results speak. Over time, people stopped laughing at Tom's comments. They started noticing the pattern. And Tom, he lost credibility, while Sarah rose. So how do you deal with someone who highlights your flaws to block your success? First, see through the performance. Their criticism is not about growth, it's about control. Second, stay grounded. Don't let their voice override your value. And third, keep building. Let your consistency become the loudest response. At the end of the day, anyone who needs an audience to correct you is showing you their weakness, not yours. Your dignity is your defense. Stay focused, stay calm, and never let their noise block your path. If you've watched the video this far, don't forget to leave a comment with a "thank God" and give it a like if you enjoyed the content. Your support means a lot and motivates me to keep creating more interesting videos. I hope you find inspiration in them and that we continue learning together. Thank you for your support. Number 4, they pretend to support while secretly competing. Let's talk about one of the most deceptive behaviors that people use to block your success, pretending to support you while secretly competing behind the scenes. These are the ones who smile when you win, clap when you speak, and nod when you share your dreams. But beneath that applause is discomfort. Beneath the encouragement is quiet rivalry. They act like they're in your corner, but every time you make progress, they feel smaller, not inspired. And so they adjust their strategy. Instead of open competition, they hide it. They mask it in advice. You'll hear things like, "Don't burn yourself out," or "Maybe that goal's too ambitious," or "Are you sure this is the right time?" But listen closely, those words aren't always meant to help. They're meant to redirect you, dull your edge, shake your certainty just enough so you slow down while they catch up. People who pretend to support you while secretly competing aren't trying to grow with you. They're trying to block your momentum without revealing their true intentions. And the most dangerous part, because they disguise it as care, it's easy to trust them, to let them influence your path. But over time, you realize their advice always leads you away from risk, away from boldness, away from your edge. That's not support, that's subtle sabotage. Here's where Stoic wisdom exposes the truth. Aristotle said, "A friend to all is a friend to none." In other words, someone who claps for you in public but competes with you in silence is not a true friend. Stoicism teaches us to look beyond words, to study actions, because intentions don't always come dressed in conflict. Sometimes they wear the mask of encouragement. Let me share a story. A guy I know, his name's Jacob, started his own business last year. His longtime friend Ben cheered him on from day one, or so it seemed. But whenever Jacob shared a new idea, Ben would offer advice that seemed helpful, but always led Jacob to play it safe. Maybe wait a few months. Maybe keep your job just in case. Don't scale too fast. And every time Jacob hesitated based on that advice, Ben would immediately take a similar idea and act on it. Quietly, strategically. And one day, it clicked. Ben wasn't clapping for Jacob's growth. He was trying to block it while building his own. So how do you deal with someone like this? First, stop confusing politeness with loyalty. Second, test the advice you're given. Does it lead you closer to your goals or further away? And third, watch what people do when you succeed. Do they celebrate or do they shift? At the end of the day, support that comes with strings is not support at all. Real allies don't compete, they uplift. Protect your vision, move in clarity, and never let disguised competition block your elevation. Number 5. They make you feel guilty for prioritizing yourself. Let's talk about one of the most common ways people try to block your success, by making you feel guilty for putting yourself first. It starts small. You set a boundary, decline a plan, or say no to something that drains you, and suddenly you're being called selfish, distant, or not the same anymore. But you haven't done anything wrong. You've simply chosen to grow, and they don't like that. You see, guilt is one of the most subtle tools people use when they feel your progress slipping beyond their control. They know they can't stop your ambition directly, so instead they plant emotional landmines. They say things like, "You've changed," or "You used to be there for me," or "I guess your new life's more important now." But what they're really saying is, "You're no longer accessible on my terms, and that threatens me." People like this aren't asking for your time. They're asking for your sacrifice. They don't want connection. They want compliance. And when you stop overextending yourself, when you finally say, "I matter too," they frame it as betrayal. That's not love. That's control. And it's how they try to block your success, by making you question whether you even deserve to focus on yourself. This is where Stoic wisdom clears the fog. Epictetus said, "He who seeks approval from all loses himself." And that's the trap. Once you start bending your life to avoid disappointing others, you stop living it for yourself. Stoicism teaches us to align with reason, not reaction, to trust our principles, not their pressure. Because the truth is, you don't owe anyone your burnout. You don't owe anyone your peace. Let me tell you about someone I know. Her name is Jessica. She spent years putting everyone else first, family, friends, her workplace. And any time she tried to take a step for herself, starting a business, moving to a new city, setting firmer boundaries, someone in her circle would say, "But what about us?" It wasn't concern, it was fear. Fear that her growth would leave them behind. And when she finally stopped apologizing for prioritizing her health, her dreams, her time, they said she had changed. And she had. But not in the way they meant. She had evolved. And the people who couldn't grow with her tried to use guilt as a leash. So how do you respond when guilt shows up disguised as love? First, remember, prioritizing yourself is not a betrayal, it's survival. Second, ask, does this relationship require me to shrink in order to belong? And third, stop explaining choices rooted in growth to people committed to staying the same. At the end of the day, anyone who makes you feel guilty for becoming healthier, wiser, or stronger is trying to block your evolution. Don't shrink to soothe their fear. Stand tall in your truth and keep rising. If you found this valuable, hit like and subscribe for more powerful insights. Number 6. They remind you of your past. Let's talk about one of the most subtle ways people try to block your success, by constantly reminding you of who you used to be. Not out of curiosity, not out of support, but as a tactic. They'll bring up your old mistakes, your past failures, or the version of you that struggled, not to help you grow, but to keep you anchored in self-doubt. They don't say it to hurt you directly. They say it to shake your vision of who you're becoming. This is one of the most deceptive ways someone tries to block your evolution, because it doesn't come with an argument. It comes with a smile, a laugh, or a casual, "Remember when you used to?" And before you know it, you're questioning your own progress. You're wondering, am I really different now? That's the point. If they can keep your mind trapped in your history, they don't have to deal with your future. If they can get you to internalize your past as your identity, they don't have to acknowledge the strength you've built since. See, not everyone is rooting for your transformation. Some people are more comfortable with the version of you that stayed small, stayed unsure, stayed quiet. Because the stronger you become, the more it threatens the roles they played in your old story. So instead of celebrating who you are now, they resurrect who you used to be, to block your confidence from expanding. This is where Stoic wisdom lights the path. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You are not your past. The wise man grows with time, not bound by it." That's the reminder. Your past is part of your story, but it doesn't own the ending. Stoicism teaches us not to cling to old identities or let others define us by our history. Growth is not about perfection, it's about progression, and no one has the right to drag you backward when you've fought to move forward. Let me tell you about a guy named Chris. Years ago, Chris battled addiction and made some bad choices, but he worked through it, got clean, got therapy, rebuilt his life, started a business, began mentoring others. But some people from his past couldn't let go of the old Chris. Every time he posted something inspiring, they'd comment, "Funny coming from you," or "Guess anyone can pretend to be wise now." Chris realized they weren't reminding him of his past because they cared. They were doing it because his growth blocked their comfort zone. So he stopped defending who he had become and started living it fully. So how do you handle someone who tries to reduce you to your past? First, stop engaging in the old narrative. Second, don't explain your transformation, embody it. And third, recognize their memory of you doesn't have to become your prison. At the end of the day, growth threatens people who haven't grown. And when they can't block your progress with words, they'll try to chain you to who you used to be. Don't let them. You've earned who you are now. Don't surrender it to anyone's outdated version of you. Number 7. They celebrate when you fail. Let's talk about one of the most revealing ways someone tries to block your success. They celebrate when you fail. You'll notice it not through their words, but through their silence, their smirks, their sudden comfort in your discomfort. These are the people who never cheer when you win, but suddenly show up with extra interest when things go wrong. Their energy shifts. Their tone softens, not from compassion, but from satisfaction. Because deep down, your growth made them feel small, and your struggle gives them relief. Here's the truth. Someone who secretly roots for your downfall never wanted your success to begin with. They may have smiled when you announced your plans. They may have congratulated you when you reached milestones. But it was all surface, because underneath, your elevation blocked the illusion they had built, that you were the same, that you would never surpass them, that they were still ahead. So when you stumbled, it confirmed their hopes, and they celebrated quietly. This is one of the most deceptive ways people show their true intentions. They don't have to say, "I'm glad you failed." They just have to react slower when you win, and faster when you fall. And when someone sees your misstep as their moment, you've seen exactly who they are. Here's where Stoic wisdom brings clarity. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "It is not death that a man should fear, but never beginning to live." In other words, fear doesn't lie in failure. It lies in never daring to rise. Stoicism doesn't protect you from setbacks. It teaches you how to respond with resilience. And when someone celebrates your fall, they reveal a fear far greater than yours, the fear of being left behind while you keep rising. Let me share a story. There's a woman I know, her name is Emily. She launched a wellness coaching brand online. It grew fast. Her content went viral. Clients poured in. But one of her oldest friends, Rachel, always seemed distant. Whenever Emily shared good news, Rachel was busy. But when Emily ran into a public backlash, a minor controversy over a misunderstood post, Rachel suddenly resurfaced. She didn't offer support. She didn't check in. She reposted the criticism and added a passive-aggressive caption. That wasn't friendship. That was celebration dressed as detachment. So how do you deal with someone who celebrates when you fail? First, pay attention. Energy never lies. Second, don't try to win their approval back. Their reaction to your fall was never about you. It was about their insecurity. And third, use the experience as fuel. Rise again, not to prove them wrong, but to prove to yourself that no amount of shade can block your light. At the end of the day, failure isn't the end. It's data, it's redirection, and anyone who claps for your fall is already behind you. Let them stay there. Keep walking, keep rising, keep living. If you believe this video can help others, give it a like. It helps the YouTube algorithm show it to more people. And don't forget to subscribe for more awesome content coming your way. Share your thoughts in the comments. I will definitely reply.